Good afternoon, Finance Committee members. I'm David Rowell, Project Planner, and I'm here to discuss a loan restatement request for Coronel Place. The Coronel Place project is located at 625 to 629 Coronel Place on the west side of the freeway and a short walking distance to Santa Barbara City College. Coronel consists of 2 apartment buildings providing 20 rental units for low and moderate income households. It has 2 2-bedroom units, 10 3-bedroom units, 2 4-bedroom units, and 6 5-bedroom units. Now for a little background. In 1984, the former redevelopment agency of the city of Santa Barbara provided Lower West Side Associates a residual receipts loan in the amount of $560,000 secured by the improvements at 625 to 629 Coronel Place. At the time of the agency loan, the underlying real property was leased from another entity. In 1990, Coronel Place, Inc. acquired title to the real property and improvements and assumed the agency loan. The agency loan has a 4.5% simple interest rate. Repayment is based on the residual receipts calculation method and is due and payable on July 17, 2014. The restated city loan, if approved, will remain subject and subordinate only to the bond financing that has a balance of $725,000. So let's review the current financing on the project. In first position is the bond financing for $725,000, followed by the City of Santa Barbara's loan for $533,000, then LTD Partners for $27,993, and Santa Barbara Community Housing Corp. for $283,876, for a grand total of $1,574,869. The city loan plus all the other financing in the project results in a combined loan-to-value of 26% based on a very conservative property valuation of $6 million. Currently, the owner is paying $8,754 monthly on the existing bond financing, the first lien holder, which will be paid in full on November 15, 2020. There are very few 3, 4, and 5-bedroom affordable units in Santa Barbara. By restating the city loan, instead of accepting payment in full in July, the city will preserve these larger units as affordable for an additional 30 years. Currently, the owner is paying the city $2,823 per month based upon project year 2013 residual receipts. The restated city loan shall provide for the following. The due date will be extended 30 years to expire July 17, 2044. The interest rate will continue at 4.5%. Beginning January 1, 2015, the monthly payment will be $4,525 or the calculated residual receipts payment, whichever is greater. Beginning December 1, 2020, after the existing bond financing is paid in full, the monthly payment will increase to $9,525 or the calculated residual receipts payment, whichever is greater. The allowed reserves included in the calculation for the residual receipts payment will be increased from 6% to 10% of the annual gross rental income. These additional reserves will provide source of funds which will be used as needed to extend the useful life of this project. All other loan terms remain unchanged, and the city loan will remain subordinate only to the existing bond financing, which once again will be paid in full November 2020. Extended affordability. The city previously restricted rents and occupancy of the units through the conditions outlined in the 1984 agency loan. As part of the restatement of the loan, the affordability restrictions will be extended 30 years until July 17, 2044. The affordability restrictions shall provide that if upon annual review it is determined that a household's adjusted gross income has exceeded 120% of area median income or the moderate income category, the tenant's monthly rent could increase to that amount equal to 1/12 of 30% of the household's income. This rent could not be increased unless the lease has expired and there's a 90-day notice that's required. In such cases, the maximum rent charged the tenant will not exceed the HUD published fair market rents or the exception fair market rents if applicable. As previously stated, this project has very desirable 3, 4, and 5 bedroom units. It is hoped that this provision will encourage some turnover to accommodate a very long waiting list and maintain the required proportion of low-income units for larger households. This restatement benefits both the owner and the city. The owner benefits by having predictable payments, being able to provide quality, affordable housing for decades, and having their loan term extended without a balloon payment. The benefits to the city are there's no additional cost associated with this restatement, no additional funding. The city loan will remain in second position until the existing bond financing is paid off in November 15th, 2020. The combined loan to value, once again, is only 26%, and based on the minimum monthly payments proposed, the city loan will be paid in full on or before January 30th, 2024. As I mentioned earlier, the affordability will be extended another 30 years to expire on July 17th, 2044. With the end of the redevelopment agency, it's important that long-term stable funding sources that generate funds to pay for ongoing monitoring and enforcement of the city's affordable program be maintained. In conclusion, the recommendations are that Finance Committee consider and recommend that Council approve a restatement of the 1984 loan agreement and authorize the Community Development Director to execute, subject to approval as to form by the City Attorney, such agreements and related city documents as necessary. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I'd also like to point out that we have Emmett Hawks and Cindy Young in the second row from Community Housing Corp. In attendance. They represent the owners if you'd like to direct any questions their way.
Very good. Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Mr. White.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, just a comment, however, is that also a benefit to the city is that the income goes up from, is it $2,000 a month to $4,000 a month or thereabouts? So
yes.
It's noticeable. So the extension of the of the affordability by 30 years, that's not the maximum that could be imposed, right? Can't it go to 45 years, something like that?
Finance Committee Member White, there's already been 30 years on this project, so we're adding another 30. Typically, it's a combined of 60 years, but you are correct. We could extend it further than we have.
And the reasoning behind that?
The belief is that since they're paying the loan off 20 years prior to the expiration of affordability, that's a fair compromise, if you will. We're getting an additional 20 years of affordability beyond having any funds on the project whatsoever.
Those are my questions.
Okay. Mr. Hart, any questions?
Just to really to restate, so you said the 26% loan to value, that's the total debt to value. That's not the city's share of that.
That's correct.
So we're even a smaller percentage of that.
That's correct. Okay.
And then being in second place, do we have any rights over refinancing of the other debt? If they're potentially down the road, they were to incur other debt.
Finance Committee Member Hart, we always review any refinancing and we approve the subordination of our existing debt. So if they were to pay off the bond financing and come to us and say, well, we want to take more financing out and we want you to be in second lien position, we would review the terms of that and come to the appropriate committee.
Perfect. Okay. That's all I have. The only question I have. Thank you.
So if we weren't to follow this recommendation, what would happen?
Chairperson Francisco, they would probably pay off the loan in July, and we would lose the affordability of the project, potentially.
So really the advantage to the city, there's no financial advantage. The advantage is preserving that housing stock in the affordable housing.
I would say the advantage also is we're getting 4.5% on our money. and we're getting a guaranteed payment plan that steps up from a minimum of $4,500 starting next year to $9,500 in 2020. So we're actually getting a good return on our money and buying extended affordability as well.
Okay. And there's nothing else out there that would allow us, that would give us that 4.5% or better return?
There's always instruments that are available that you can invest in that give you a better return than 4.5%, but we, as the city, I believe, invest in the LAIF rate, which is currently less than 1%, I would imagine.
Mr. Samari, do you have a comment on that? Would we be prevented from investing in anything that would give us 4.5% or better?
Well, we're talking about, housing projects. If we had idle money that was just sitting around, what we would do with it, we would invest it and earn, less than 4%. But I think the question is, comparing it to other projects, what kind of return you get via rents or other forms of return, not compared to our investment portfolio, because that's not going to produce housing for us.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Thank you. In that case, if there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion.
I'd move the staff recommendation.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
So the next item is continuing our discussion on the fiscal year 2015 recommended budget. So today the focus will be entirely on looking at fees, proposed fees for next year, and it'll be even more narrow than that because we're going to just focus on general fund fees. So all those departments that reside within the general fund will be discussing their fees where there are changes. Next week we will be talking about the enterprise fund fees. We'll see a lot more discussion, or at least some more discussion there. So we are just going to go through them one by one, and some of them have just review with you what we've already talked about, at length, particularly with water and wastewater and solid waste. We've talked about those already. So we're really just going to kind of ask if you have any questions with regard to those. But we're going to start with the finance department. There's no overhead or anything like that, but just a couple of comments or proposed changes for next year.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair Francisco, committee members. I'm Julie Nemes. I'm the accounting manager for the finance department. I will be really brief today. I'm going to talk specifically about the finance administrative fees. This is a new section that's being proposed this year. I believe it's page 40 in your fee resolution. And what this administrative fee section is doing is that there are a few fees that have been in the past in several different sections. And what we're doing is trying to apply them consistently throughout the city. So we are now putting them in one finance administrative fee section. The first one I wanted to talk about is the decline check payment fee. This is for any numerous different types of billings, such as AR billings, our utility billings. If we get a return check, the bank does charge us fees associated with that. So we are proposing to charge a fee of $28. It is a slight increase from last year from $27. And this will be a consistent application for all of our billings. The second one, the declined electronic payment fee, this is a new one this year, and we did place it in the resolution while we did some additional research with our bank, since it is a new contract with the bank, to find out what fees are involved. And we did discover that we have less fees involved in this than we believed we did. There are some very minimal fees, so we are proposing to actually strike this from the fee resolution, so we wouldn't be charging this $28 fee for the electronic payment. And the last one are the general copy fees. Throughout the different sections, you'll see some specialized copy fees are different. These are just meant for the general copy fees, the cost for both black and white and color, to provide a more consistent application throughout the city. Any questions?
So I didn't understand about the declined electronic payment fee. Is that going to be reduced, or is it non-existent?
We're going to eliminate it. We would propose to eliminate it. What that is most commonly for auto payments. For our accounts receivable billings or our utility billings, we have customers sign up for auto payments,
Okay.
and occasionally those will be returned, and
Okay.
the bank is only charging us a $1 fee for those
I
returns.
see. And you mentioned the copy fees. Where do those appear?
They're in various different sections. There's some
Okay.
specialized copy fees. I believe Public Works has some specialized copy fees, and those are above and beyond just a black and white copy of a one-page document.
And what is the general copy fee?
The general copy fee we're proposing is going to be for black and white 10 cents per page, and for color 20 cents per page.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Did you have a question, Mr. White?
I do. I know that we're, with this bank, or the new bank, the Union Bank, there's a fee it's either on the books or it's in the works that they would be charging. Previously, we didn't pay any fee to the bank for all of our banking services. Now, there will be a fee, and it's quite a substantial one, right?
So, Mr. Chair.
And where I'm headed with this is to say that then I had understood that that would be covering such likes as declining check payment fees and so forth. So can you describe how that would be working?
Mr. Chair, Committee Member White, so we've always paid for banking services. It's just how we paid and how much we paid. Historically, with Santa Barbara Bank and Trust, we paid through what's called a compensating balance. So we put money in the bank, and they kept the interest on that. Because of interest rates going down, they essentially the cost to us was very minimal in the last few years, particularly with Union Bank. They're evaluating all their services, so they're going to propose much higher fees, and how we pay for that could also be through compensating balances or just writing them a check. But these are the fees that we are, at least one of the fees that we're charged. It's not a big one, but when somebody has an NSF check, we're charged for that as part of our fees that we pay. And so we're just proposing to pass that on along with additional staff time to the customer.
Thank you.
Okay, carry on.
Okay, next we have the fire department. I think they're Ron Lichty, their business manager.
Chair Francisco, committee members. So fire department has a couple of fee changes for the new fiscal year, and they're both relatively minor and immaterial. First one is we're having one increase. It's an increase to the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District, and we charge homeowners in that assessment district a fee annually for those services to provide vegetation clearance and evacuation, road clearance, and defensible space management for them, which you're familiar with. We get an annual engineer's report that is able to increase the fee for cost increases, and the main, we're allowed to increase it per the regulation by up to 4%. This year, it only increased 0.77%, so under 1%. And the average homeowner, there's two types of fees there. There are two levels, one for the regular homeowners in the foothill area, and then there's extreme fire foothill area. The regular foothill area, the fee increased from $75.14 for each homeowner to $75.72. That was a 52-cent increase. And for the extreme foothill zone, it went from $93.17 to $93.89, a 72-cent increase. The impact of that fee increase is about, overall to the fund, $2,000. So, and then the second fee change was actually a decrease of $2. We have a fire inspection fee for we call Title 19 properties, and those Title 19 institutions are like long-term health care, daycare centers, that kind of facility. And the health and safety regulations say we are permitted to charge only $50 for one level of that, for the lower level, and then there's $100 for larger institutions. So there's two levels there. And we were charging $52, and we had to decrease that to $50. And for the larger institutions, it was $104, and it reduced down to only $100. It was and the impact to, we only have about 100, it depends on the year how many facilities we have, but the impact of that to the fund would only be about $300 in total.
Any questions?
I'd make a comment, Mr. Chair, and that is, since I live in the benefit assessment area, I would ask that that component be voted on separately so that I can abstain.
I think we can arrange that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next is library.
Good afternoon, Margaret Astor, Library Services Manager. recommending two changes. One is the elimination of the $1 hold fee. It was established increased from 50 cents to $1 approximately 3 years ago. This was when the state eliminated the reimbursement for jurisdictions in sharing our materials. So we are recommending the elimination of that fee this year. It has adversely affected the branches that have a significant low-income population, and we believe that will level the playing field. The second change is this was an oversight. We have a collection agency that we do recommend when fees get a little high and books and items are lost. And this has been established, but it was an oversight that we did not have it on our fees, so we're adding that.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it?
We're simple.
That is simple.
Very few changes.
Very simple. Any questions on that, gentlemen?
No questions, just a comment. Thanks for eliminating the reserve materials hold fee. That's a great idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we have Recreation next. Ms. Judith McCaffrey.
Chair Francisco and Finance Committee members, my name is Judith McCaffrey, and I'm a Recreation Manager with the Parks and Recreation Department. I'll tell you a little bit about our proposed fee changes. As you know, we have a large number of fees. So we have 629 program and facility fees, and in the fiscal 15 budget, we're proposing that 418 of our fees are going to remain unchanged, so 66% of them. We'll be proposing to change 211 fees and adding 18 new fees with a number of new programs that we'll be offering. Staff review fees annually and consider a number of factors during the process, considering community need, the importance of the program, the demographics of the target audience. Is the activity unique or available in the community? We look at our competition. We do have quite a bit of competition, for example, for summer camps. And we also try to price our programs to maximize participation. Here are just a few examples of some of the fees that we're proposing increases for in this next fiscal year. I'll just highlight a couple of them. We have our nonprofit lease rates at our neighborhood centers. We're just proposing a 3% increase, basically 4 cents per square feet. There's an example of a summer camp fee that we're increasing. Out of bounds camp 1 week is going from $155 to $175. We're just adding some additional field trips in that camp, so the prices have gone up. Our adult flag football example there, our team cost is going from $300 to $400. It's a new program, and after the first season, we determined we really needed 2 referees to ensure fairness and safety in the program. So that's reflecting going from 1 referee to 2 referees per game. We have our outdoor private gathering fees there. That's an example of a rental for 50 people for 10 hours in a park, city park. We're proposing some increases for those private gatherings, anywhere from 3 to 7%. We're still showing a lot of good revenue growth in our rentals, and we're keeping our prices consistent with what the county charges for their parks. So we feel really confident in that increase. And lastly, we have some proposals for increases. The Creo Recreation Center, the Creo Gym. Goodness sakes, we could book that for every hour of the day. It's so busy. We're proposing an increase of 5%. And the Creo Recreation Center, since it's been remodeled, we just have a lot of interest for events, weddings, and fundraisers there. So we're proposing a 5% increase for that facility. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about Parks and Recreation fees.
Mr. Hart, just going back to that last slide, there weren't 18 things on there, were there? There's subsets of that?
You mean we have 18 new fees that were for new programs. No, this is just an example of some of the fees that we're proposing to be changed.
And then where would the new fees be in this document?
Well, in the document, you'll see in the far right corner, there in the comment section, for each of the fees, we note whether it's a new fee, whether we're deleting it, perhaps we're not offering the program again,
Okay.
or if we're not changing the fee, what the justification is. And in the case of where we are proposing an increase, we list when it was increased in the past.
I
and
see. All the
how
details
we're
right there.
justifying
Okay.
proposing the increase.
Okay. Did we get this just now, today?
There are 2 copies also in your offices.
There are? Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. White?
Thank you very much.
Okay, community development's next.
Good afternoon, Chair Francisco and Finance Committee. For the Community Development Department, seeing as this is the second year of a 2-year financial plan and operating budget for 2015, we looked at what we had projected in the way of fee increases for last year and what was planned for this year. As a general rule, we do look at an across-the-board adjustment for various cost of living and operating expenses, and then we look specifically at certain programs if a more particular adjustment is needed. So again, what we are recommending today is 3% across the board in general for planning fees and building and safety permit fees. And as I said, every year we also look at the appropriateness of other changes. So I'm going to highlight on this screen, we're showing just a list of the typical type of planning permit process fees that will be are recommended for a 3% increase. And that includes coastal permit, condo conversions, development plan, our environmental review, modifications, tentative maps, etc. The fees where we're recommending no change this year include appeals. In prior years, we've had discussions about whether or not appeals of decisions of, say, for example, historic landmarks to council or staff hearing officer to planning commission, whether or not the council would be interested in looking at the appeal process. And based on the last major discussion we've had, we've just kept the fees low, consistent with working with the city clerk's office as well. So those would remain unchanged. We found that for minor coastal reviews, that the amount of time that staff spends, a couple of hours, is appropriate, and we didn't think that needed to be increased. Same with our mailing service. We have already on stock many of those yellow bright signs, and the cost is remaining constant, so no change there. Our staff hourly rate is a combination. It's an average rate of a couple different planner positions. It's $135 an hour, and based on a quick assessment, we felt that was appropriate to remain unchanged. Modification reviews. This is an area where we meet property owners that sometimes are really undertaking a fairly minor project, and we don't want to see that the planning fee is such a substantial concern to them. So we're proposing modifications remain the same. And in parentheses, it says non-DART. DART is the more formal application review that goes to the Planning Commission. And then lastly, the zoning information reports. I think you all are familiar that we're continue to work closely with the Santa Barbara Association of Realtors, and the current fees are a reflection of what was changed last year. We did make some changes last year. We actually reorganized and lowered the fee for multi-unit properties. That is more reflective of, again, the level of service needed. And then for the single-family home, we're recommending that it remain the same. There's still concern on the part of the real estate community at that the city's fee of $465 they feel is substantial. We feel it's appropriate based on the number of hours that we're spending, but we don't see any need to increase that at this time. Similar story for building and safety. In general, there is an across-the-board 3% increase, but what's listed on the screen here are a number of fairly minor and routine things that it's really important that people come in and get the permits, and keeping a fee static at a reasonable rate, we feel, is the right message and program to have. So those things that would remain unchanged are fire alarm wiring, special festival wiring, restriping and paving type of permits. We also are keeping unchanged a number of our plan and archive storage. We've maintained the costs fairly consistently in those programs, and so we're recommending that no change to those items as well. And there were a few things in building and safety that actually these were little specialized fees that we find we don't need anymore, because the plan check review and inspection of these types of items, the green plan check is really part of now the California codes, and we don't really need a separate fee. It would have been double charging, so we haven't really even been charging these fees. So those are proposed to be eliminated. And then just a minor comment, there's a few fees related to document review in the housing and affordable housing program, and those are recommended to be remain the same as well. So that's our presentation.
Only question I would have is, what is the State Strong Movement Instrument fee?
You know, I should have asked Mr. Cassidy
Sorry.
that as well.
I couldn't resist.
Don't
I
answer
was
that.
trying to figure it out.
Good afternoon, Chairman Francisco, committee members. My name is Larry Cassidy. I'm the inspection supervisor for building and safety. The Strong Motion Instrument Program is a state mandated program which takes fees from jurisdictions across the state, and they take those monies and install instruments to study seismic activity and the effects on buildings and structures of all types.
Did you have a question, Mr. White?
So where are we now in terms of how much these services are costing us? I know that traditionally you've been able to give a figure of what % of total cost we're recouping. Where are we now?
The situation definitely has varied. When we project our revenues for the department, when it comes to building and safety, the projection is to be towards full cost recovery, and that includes both inspection and plan check. In planning and land development, our goal ranges around 50% in most programs. I can tell you that in prior years, design review was up closer to 70% recovery, but now we have had a slowdown in the last couple of years, so I think the recovery for design review is also closer to 50%. The department and planning division has had a reduction in staff, so the costs have also come down. So our target is still 50% subsidy.
So 50% in planning and roughly full cost recovery in building and safety?
That's correct.
Yeah.
There are a few exceptions. Again, in planning, we are targeting the ZIR to be close to full cost recovery, and our plan check function that with the planners that do the plan check, those are also targeted for their contribution to be full cost. And then some things are subsidized a bit more. Sign permits continue to be subsidized. Even though we simplified the process, there still is a weekly review of sign permits. And so I think the subsidy of that is a bit under 50, or over 50, I'm sorry.
And you said that, and then on the volume of applications and such like, I'm imagining there's a sweet spot in there where we're fully using our staff and therefore collecting the maximum amount of revenue. Can you characterize that for us right now? How are we doing with? I know we've been hiring, had bits of hiring here and there, so that was as a sign of more activity. But anyway, give us a couple of words on that.
The added staff positions that we had last year were hourly staff to help in enforcement. So those positions really didn't relate to revenues at all. The estimate that we have, and I think this will be reported at one of the third quarter reports, we think in building and safety, it's really hard. Well, it's hard in all these areas to project. But Mr. Estrella says every year, and he tends to be pretty darn right, that we'll come in at our projections. I think that what we projected for this year was both in building and in planning was a slight increase over last year. So in planning, we're not 100% sure that we'll come in. we think we may be under revenues projections a little bit. We had a slowdown in single-family design board this year that was a little bit unexpected. We have been having more work in the Planning Commission than years past. So I think we're doing fine in terms of the staffing level for the development activity right now. For this past year, that hasn't been a major concern. The added staff that we were able to bring on just recently was related to a grant for the update of the local coastal program. And then, of course, the council had a special capital program to update the zoning ordinance, and that's a specific project where we added a staff position. But if you look at the rest of the staff, we're pretty busy, and so I think we're at a good place right now, other than the recommended added plan check for planning. That's part of the recommended budget. You'll hear more about that next week.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. Last minute changes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Finance Committee members. John Owasiak, Principal Civil Engineer for the Public Works Department. And I've given you a handout. Is actually that slide. There's no changes from that slide. I thought it might be a little challenging to read, as it may be, so I thought you could have a copy to refer to as well. So our Public Works, this is the land development, engineering land development, and real property fees for Public Works. And our fee resolution consists of 8 pages. And I just have highlighted the items that have changed. So overall, similar to the Community Development Department, we have a 3% across the board, the increase. And then we have these modifications, changes, and clarifications for these line items as listed. And so generally, these fees are for the work activities in the public rights of way and or on city property or associated with the land development activities that Public Works is the lead for, such as the post-PC activities, subdivision map act, civil drawings for the public right-of-way, outdoor dining, and those types of activities. And they're every year, annually, for the last many years, it's been approximately 1,500 to 1,600 Public Works permits issued per year. So these fees are based on cost recovery for the services rendered. Again, 3% across the board, and they're represented in this slide as the red on this slide. And similarly, where there's no word changes on the other items, it'll just be the 3% for all the other items. And again, this 3% is generally consistent with the other land development team and other departments as part of the land development team. So generally no new fee line items are proposed, just these modifications. And examples are that we have a word change. There was just a typo, and land was one of the words, but it should have been lane, a lane closure as opposed to a land closure. Other examples would be in the outdoor dining. We've moved from under construction, the amendment to an outdoor dining license agreement, to the area of the application. So it was easier for staff to find it and for others to recognize it. And then on the bottom, the subdivision map review, we had recently a map that came in for correction. Typically, maps coming in for corrections, they deal with the legal survey points, and they get changed or modified when they get constructed, when they get actually placed in the field. And so map modification may be needed. We had one that came in that had 12 points, and that was very unusual. Usually there's 1 or 2, just a handful at most. And so our fee structure was such that it would have been at $112 an item, it would have been a $1,300 processing cost. And we recognized, well, we need to modify that so that when that type comes in, those unusual types come in, we have a better cost recovery structure, because it only costs in the neighborhood of $400 or $500 to process that type of a change. So we made that type of a change, and generally all these changes are in line with better having a better mechanism from which to do more accurate cost recovery. And that's my presentation.
I did have a question. What do you do in the instance you just described, where the fees don't match the circumstances and yet the modifications haven't been
Throughout our fee resolution, it's established as our hourly rate. Betty mentioned that theirs is, I think, $135 an hour. And our hourly rate, as you see here, the new hourly rate is $115 an hour. In that case, we charge the hourly rate to make it fair and equitable.
Got it. So you have a mechanism to fix things that don't fit in the box.
They don't fit exactly.
Great.
So we try and do the cost recovery and be fair and reasonable. And in those instances, we have those one-of-a-kinds, then we certainly make it work to make it fair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So that's it.
Okay.
That concludes our report.
Very good. And you need a recommendation?
I think what we're going to do is recommendation we find. We're going to also ask sort of a consolidated recommendation at the end, but recommendation would be great.
And just ask that the benefit assessment piece be.
I'll move the staff recommendation with the exception of the wildland benefit assessment fee.
Okay. Second.
All those in favor of recommending this to the council, say aye.
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 And I'll make a motion for the wildland benefit assessment fee per the staff recommendation.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
I'll abstain.
Okay, thank you.
It's been a pleasure having all of you here today.